Hey guys, welcome back to the Better Dads Club podcast. I'm Tom, and in this episode, I sat down with Nathan Wallis, and I can genuinely say that this is one of the most exciting conversations I've had on the podcast so far. In fact, we got so deep into talking that we just kept on talking, so I've decided to split this conversation into two parts. Nathan has an incredible ability to take complex neuroscience and make it practical and easy to understand. And what I love about this conversation is that it doesn't feel like a lecture. To me, it just felt like sitting down with a mate over a cup of coffee and talking honestly about raising kids. In part one, we get into Nathan's upbringing and how that shaped the father he became. We talk about what really matters in the first 3 years of a child's life, navigating behavioral issues, raising confident kids, when to teach and when to simply let them play, the importance of music, language for the developing brain, why Nathan believes the three most important things we can give our kids are relationship, relationship, relationship. There's a huge amount in this one. But before we jump in, a quick one for those of you in Wellington, New Zealand. This Father's Day, Sunday the 6th of September, we are hosting our first Better Dads Club Father's Day picnic at Maidstone Park in Upper Hutt. We've got live music, games, activities for the kids, for yourself, food trucks, a fire truck, Wellington Free Ambulance, Education Ambulance. You can also get some special Father's Day photos thanks to David Jenkins Photography. Plus, we're also having a raffle to fundraise for Kids Need Dads. A massive thank you to Lawrence Roofing for proudly sponsoring the event and helping us to bring it to life. So bring the kids and come connect with some other dads, families, and let's celebrate Father's Day together. You'll find all the details in the Facebook event in the show notes. And if you are enjoying the Better Dads Club podcast, please follow or subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this and share this episode with another dad who might get something from it. All right, that's enough from me. Let's get into it. Well, good evening, Nathan. Welcome along to the Better Dads Club podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. I am very grateful to have you here.
Oh, cheers, Tom.
I would love for you to describe who you are and what it is that you do and how you're out in the world supporting dads and families in raising their kids, being better examples for their kids.
Yeah, I've got one of those jobs that didn't exist sort of when I was a kid, so it's hard to just say, I'm a plumber, or, so I sort of feel like I've got to give a long explanation that I work with children. I mean, I always wanted to be a dad. Like I was the kid at kindergarten that said, when they're going around the circle saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone else wanted to be a fireman. I wanted to be a dad. So it's always been, I love parenting. I went straight to teacher's college because I was always good with kids. I mean, I was a naughty kid. So I was, I went to a very tolerant school, luckily. So I got suspended, but I never got expelled. I went to teacher's college, trained as a primary school teacher, spent 1 year as a primary school teacher and worked out it was the naughty kids that I really liked the most, got on the best with, had the most fun with. And certainly they responded well to me because they don't usually have another naughty kid as their teacher. So you get them and understand them and stuff. Yeah, and then so I went back and did a master's degree in counselling. So I thought I can just work with the naughty kids, not try and teach the other 23 kids in the class. When you work with naughty kids, it turns out they're usually traumatised kids. It's all trauma. So I specialised in trauma. So, a little bit of time as a primary school teacher, then about 15 years working with kids in therapeutic settings around healing from, recovering from trauma. And that's what introduced me to the brain. I'd sort of, as a young person, been fascinated in the brain, but there wasn't a lot of information about it. But in the 1990s, we got MRI scans and PET scans, basically magic machines that see inside your head while you're still alive. Everything before that was based on dead people's brains, so a limited amount of information. And then I was good at teaching that, so I ended up as a lecturer. I went back and retrained after learning all that information. I thought, if you really want to create or change someone's life, you need to work in the first, in early childhood. That really, we have a society that thinks early childhood's just for girls and it's shitty nappies and blowing noses, and primary school's more important and secondary school's even more important. But it's very clear in the research it's the other way around. We can statistically predict most of your outcomes from, as an adult at the age of 3. So, I say it flippantly, but it's also true that if you get the parenting right in the first 3 years, you can kind of slack off after that and the kid's probably going to be fine because it's the first 3 years that build, not for extreme trauma, but pretty much, that's how solid those first 3 years are into setting you on a path. So I went back and retrained as an early childhood teacher. It didn't last very long doing that because I did not realise how hard that job was and how much energy it took. And it was the hardest job I've ever had for the least money, the least time off and stuff. I had 6 kids then, so I didn't, I had to earn more money. So I left and I became a university lecturer. And I lectured in human development, which includes brain development stuff, for about 15 years. I helped to set up the national body in New Zealand that disseminates neuroscience. So it just meant I had a job where people paid me to stay up to date with all the neuroscience. And I've always loved teaching and being on stage and stuff, so those talks went off well. And then I sort of turned that into a job. I left the university And now I give like keynotes at conferences. I do full day trainings for teachers and psychologists and professionals and youth workers and stuff, everyone wanting to understand the brain. There's lots of people understand the brain, but I think because I come from a really working class background where everyone's a freezing worker, no one else in my family even got school certificate, let alone went to university. So I'm good at just translating it into normal speak, taking away the complicated stuff and just saying it just means this. That's why I say things like you can get it right in the first 3 years, you can just about slack off after that, and you're pretty much sweet. People understand that, but yeah, I can go way more to the science of it. And I've got 3 birth kids myself. I've got my eldest daughter, whose house I'm at now. She's my favourite because she's had the most grandchildren, so she's the winner. So I had foster kids as well because I was a foster kid, and I had good experiences in foster care. So it was sort of natural progression to become a foster parent. And when you keep your foster kids, it's called home for life. So I've had 3 birth kids, 2 home for life kids. So I've got 5 grandchildren. The other kids don't get any airtime because they haven't given any grandchildren. So, no, my son lives in Sydney, and he's doing his master's degree. He's a business type guy. I remember him saying to me when he was a kid, "Your problem, Dad, is you went straight to trying to save the world." I've had a TV series and stuff, and done some documentaries, and I have a social media presence, and I've just written a book, finally. They've been asking me where the book is for like the last 20 years. But I've got ADHD, so I don't like to sit at a computer. I don't even like to do my emails, let alone write a book. So it took a long time to write the book, but it's out there now, finally.
Yeah. Congratulations on that as well. So that launched at the end of June, early July.
Yeah, that's right. It's called What Were You Thinking? Which I thought was a good catchy title because most of us have caught ourselves saying that, especially to the teenager. What were you thinking?
Yeah. And I mean, into ourselves as well, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Nathan, look, thanks for sharing all of that. You mentioned around being a naughty kid and a lot of that being around the associations there, or the correlations, I should say, there being, when the naughty kids typically come from, it's trauma.
Trauma.
And you mentioned yourself being a naughty kid and also being a foster kid as well. So, I mean, if you wouldn't mind telling me a little bit about your upbringing, what was things like for you? I mean, do you have a relationship with your dad, your mum, birth parents?
Right, yeah. And well, how much time you got? It's complicated. The short version, I can, the autism comes through a bit because I get blunt in just saying it, right? So
yeah, cool.
So my mum was lovely, sweet person. But my parents are dead. I really, really loved mum, but she was a bit shit. She, was pissed all the time. Well, not all the time. She was sort of sober Monday to Thursday. So she was a lovely person who had an addiction, and that really come first. So we had a reasonably normal Monday to Thursday, and then just once were warriors, And she, when I was 7 months old, married a evil guy who was my stepfather, who was a pedophile. I think he married my mother because he saw 3 children he could rape and get away with it because she was drunk. And so he was there for my whole childhood. So he really shaped a lot of my perception of, I remember as a young person not wanting to be a man because I was scared I was going to turn into, I thought that's what men were, violent, angry, aggressive, torturous. He was just really a psychopath, real evil guy. And so that's sort of what led me into being foster care. I was the middle of 5 kids, and mum didn't really know who my father was. She thought it was this guy, David Meekheide. And so I grew up, she tried to tell me my stepfather was my father. I knew instinctively he wasn't, and I had aunties and stuff around me that didn't like him, and so secretly told me that he wasn't my father, so I'd know. And met David Meekheide and had some relationship with him, and then found out, no, he wasn't my father. So I didn't actually meet my birth father until about a month before he died. I was in my 40s. I met him through those genetic sites you sent away. Just happened to match us up. That was a really healing, wonderful experience because the father I always wanted a father like the sort of father that I am. Well, I wanted to be a dad. So it was really lovely to meet him. And that's, it's like I've been missing him and yearning for him my whole life. He was the person that should have been my father. And he was a lovely guy. And people say, well, don't you regret that you only knew him for a month? It's like, no, I just take things as they are. In lots of ways, I got the perfect relationship with my father. I never had a fight with him because, I only knew him for a month. But it was very validating. It was really good to find out I come from a good man, and I could see so much of myself in him. I'm more like him than any of his other kids. It blows his other kids away how much we're alike. So I don't think my mum and dad remember each other. I think they were ships that passed in the night. When they found out David wasn't my father, you go through all the investigations trying to work out who it is. There was a list of about 10 people, and he wasn't even on that list. So, that's just, how it was. I think in lots of ways, I was at an advantage when I come to fathering because I didn't have the baggage that other people have about parenting. I had a friend in the family. I've seen this a couple of times where, let's just say his name's Brian, right? Brian is a lovely guy. When Brian interacts with children, he's lovely with the way he interacts with children. And then Brian gets married, and say, especially if he's got a stepchild, he then stops being Brian and starts going, oh, well, I've got to be dad now. I've got to do discipline. And he basically picks up the baggage of being his father. So he goes from being lovely Brian to being a prick like his father was, just about overnight. So oftentimes I say to fathers, stop fathering and just have an authentic relationship. Be Brian in the relationship. How does Brian treat people? Because the baggage, I've got to teach them, and you've got to learn a lesson, and you can't be led away with it. That's all the abusive shit that just leads to low-quality relationships. So, yeah, I think I was lucky because I didn't have that baggage. I hated my stepfather. It just had nothing to do with him, so I didn't pick up fathering stuff from him.
Hey guys, did you know that doing more core exercises doesn't necessarily mean you're building a stronger core? Many people jump straight into planks, crunches, and other abdominal exercises before they've learned how to activate the deep muscles that stabilize the spine and the pelvis. Those exercises might give you a burn. They might even build stronger looking six-pack muscles. But if your deep stabilizing muscles aren't switching on first, your body can develop compensation patterns that reduce efficiency and in many people contribute to ongoing aches, discomfort, or lower back problems, especially as we get older. Your core isn't just there to make your abs look good. It's the foundation for literally every movement you make. Walking, running, lifting, playing with your kids, even standing up from a chair. I've been a personal trainer for over 17 years, and since I started working alongside physiotherapists early in my career, I've used one simple tool to assess and train these deep stabilizing muscles, and it's called the Pelvic Pro Core Trainer. The Core Trainer gives you immediate visual feedback so you can actually see whether your deep core muscles are working properly. And that means you're not guessing. You're learning how to activate the muscles that help support your spine before you move. It's something I use myself and I prescribe to every client I work with because I believe that how you move is more important than what you move. And when your foundations are solid, everything else becomes easier. You move with more confidence, you reduce unnecessary compensation, and you're building strength on top of a foundation that's designed to support you for life. So if you're serious about moving better, reducing back pain, improving your performance, or simply being able to keep up with your kids without your body holding you back, then click the link around this video and check out the Pelvic Pro Core Trainer. It might just change the way you think about core training forever. So was that title of him being a stepfather, did that make it easy for you to draw that line and go, well, he's not my blood, therefore, I'm not inheriting this genetically?
Well, no, I think I hated him before that and just knew he was evil. So I didn't, I think you have to aspire to someone. I think the reason we screw up our kids is because they also love us. Even when you're a bit abusive, they still love you. I see that working with traumatized kids all the time. The kids who are least attached to their parents usually take on the role of the attachment for their parents. So they're twice as loving. If I work with a kid and all they want to do with all their pocket money is buy mum presents, and they want to spend all the time making mum cards and affirming and telling mum how much they love mum, they've usually got a shit mum. Because the kid's doing the attachment stuff. Mum's not doing it. Because when you really love a kid, they tend to take you for granted. They just think it's your job. I had no attachment to him at all. Then he didn't even try and pretend to have an attachment. Then I didn't ever see him in a father role, even before I found out he wasn't my father. But yeah, it certainly made me feel happier to know he wasn't biologically related.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what you're saying there is it's kind of like the kid. I mean, children are always going to naturally love their parents and especially the elders that are around them in the house, right? So
Yep.
mum is distant, then the kids just essentially vying for attention and going to do what they can to get that attention. And sometimes, kids will do the opposite, right? They'll lash out and, they'll be violent and they'll get into trouble. So, I mean, in terms of the attention piece, right? When a kid is acting out and they're, not behaving, quote unquote, in a way that's kind of what the parent would like or what would be deemed acceptable, right? Like, so let's say they're the bully kid or they're pushing kids around. Like oftentimes we know that, the bullies or the kids that are there that are typically, we know that they're kind of repeating what they're getting at home. So,
Yep.
Then there's also kids whose parents are lovely, but they're also off the walls. And the parents are sitting there going, I've got no idea what the fuck I'm to do with this. Like we're trying just the parenting, we're trying this mindful stuff, we're doing all of these other things, but the kids just still going out and being like violent, and we don't know where they're necessarily getting that from. Like, do you have any thoughts to that?
Yep, I'd say they don't usually get it from licking the grass. So parents want to say quickly, they're neurodiverse. People like getting a diagnosis because it means, it wasn't my responsibility. And it's never straightforward. I'd say 9 times out of 10, the behavior comes from the parents. They might not be overtly doing that to the kids, but they might be not listening to the kid, expecting to just say, no, shut up and do it. smacking them if they did something wrong, and then wondering why the kid's a bully at school, not listening and locking them in their room, and then wondering why the kid's a bully at school. So they don't see themselves as extreme, and they see that as acceptable parenting. But the base behind it is still, I'm standing over you, do as you're told. So then you can't be surprised that the kid is still using that tactic to stand over people because you're not teaching them anything else. But you're right, 1 time in 10, you're not doing that, and it just seems to be genetically driven as part of the kid's temperament. Because the kid's already a person when they're born. There's a temperament there. We say temperament plus experience equals personality. So you can change your personality quite easily, just change your experience. But your temperament is who you were born as and remains consistent your whole life. So sometimes, if you're neurodiverse and you're particularly loud and stuff, or you're particularly... the way I'd approach it with the child is I don't tell them they're doing something wrong. I go, okay, what's another way you can achieve that? All behaviour is communication. And so if the kid is, say, lashing out at school, first of all, I say, what age is he? Because if he's 2 or 3, he's supposed to be doing that. That's just not a misbehaviour. It's an unrefined social skill. You've got to learn how to do that stuff. If he's 8, 9 or 10 and he's still like the school bully, then I would think, okay, and there's nothing obviously going on at home that's causing that. There's no obvious trauma. Is it a communication issue then? Because I don't believe the kid's evil. So he's trying to do something behind that communication. All behaviour is communication. So what's he trying to communicate? And trying to get to the root of that. And then teach him other ways of doing that. So, it's hard to say because that's such a generic question. I've got to go specifically on age and context, and then I can speak to it more. It's hard to just do a generic one.
Yeah. So, look, my boy's 3.5, and I'm 6'5", and he's kind of pretty much up to my hip. Like he's definitely a big kid. I've had another conversation with one of the other dads at kindergarten as well, and they're having, there's some stuff going on with his eldest where there's, just certain behavior, and they're not really too sure where it's coming from. With my kid, I've recently had a conversation with the teacher and just been informed that my boy he'll come right up and he just has no awareness of people's space, right? So he'll come right up into people's and be, oh, hello, and right up in their eyes.
Yeah.
And that's him being really excited, and they'll go and play tag and that sort of stuff. And I'm kind of like, okay, that's cool. But then I'm also getting feedback from the teachers that, this is, hey, some of the kids, especially the kids that are the same age, but, size wise are a lot smaller. They're actually feeling a little bit intimidated, a little bit fearful. And so one of the things I suggested him last week, I was like, when I heard this, I was like, okay, buddy, like, I tell you what, why don't we try something? And like tomorrow when you're at kindy, why don't you just practice when you're going up to your friend, make sure you just put your arm out so that you've got an arm's distance.
Yep.
So my life
is a nice physical strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. He's a boy. He's tactile. If I say they just need some space, like what the fuck does that mean to a 3.5-year-old? But kind of going,
right,
here's a physical thing for you to be aware of. And if you can stand arm's length away, then let's just practice that for the day and see how you go.
Yeah.
And, to your point, I'm not afraid of, I guess, sort of the age thing. Because, I am very much like age and stage is, there's hormones going through.
Yeah.
Figuring things
just
out.
From that scenario you've given me there, that's the first time I say, well, wouldn't worry about it too much because he's 3. That probably if you do nothing, that'll go away of its own accord because that's just a personal space thing that you learn. The first thing that comes into my head is, have you had his vision tested? Because he might need to get up close to people to be able to see their facial expressions. I've worked with kids that have done that in the past, and we found out that they've got vision issues, and that's why they're going. My son was like that, actually. My son had a big age gap with his older stepbrother. So, it's like a 5-year age gap. So when he played with his brother, he would play fight with someone 5 years older. So it was much rougher. Then he got to school with the other 5-year-olds, and they said, hey, do you want to fight? And he was like, yeah, okay. And he was big too. And he'd pick them up and throw them. And then, they were like, crying, and, he was the school bully. But there's no bullying behaviour in it. He just fought like he did with his brother. The clinical thing behind that is I would talk about rhythmic patterning. Rhythmic patterning is it's in the base of your brain, so people don't talk about it much. But you probably got a rhythmic pattern by being rocked by your parents as a baby. Because it's just like it sounds, a steady rhythmic pattern. And that's in the background. And that informs things like interaction, the to and fro nature of interaction. Your baby sticks their tongue out at you, so you stick your tongue out back. That to and fro, the literature talks about it as a game of tennis, the serve and respond. So if you are raised in an orphanage or raised with a postnatally depressed mother or raised in a jolly jumper or a walker all the time and you didn't get a lot of this rhythmic patterning, then it's a rhythmic pattern that tells you how close you're supposed to be and how far you're supposed to go away. There's the rhythmic pattern that tells you we all interrupt each other in a sentence sometimes. But when you have a friend that's constantly interrupting, when you have a friend that doesn't seem to know, like when I say to my mates, and I'm driving in the car and I'm using the imaginary brake because they're right up their arse with the car in front of us. They don't seem to know the distance that makes people comfortable. And when you say, mate, you're too close up that other car, then they leave a 100-mile gap. Now, it's too big. It's like they don't seem to have the rhythmic pattern to know what is a socially acceptable distance and to be able to do that. If you don't have a rhythmic pattern, you often want to do things like chewing gum because that gives you a rhythmic pattern. That you want to swing on your chair because you don't need to swing on your chair to concentrate. But if you haven't got a rhythmic pattern, you need a rhythmic pattern to concentrate. So, yeah, that was the other sort of clinical thing that comes into my head is, does he have a good rhythmic pattern? Can he keep a rhythm? And if he can keep a rhythm, wow, yeah, there you go. And boys usually have delayed language but good motor skills. I'm pointing that out because I've got a 1-year-old grandson now and he's got 2 older sisters. And my daughter's, he's like 14 months and all he says is meh, meh, meh. He's got a whole language based on meh. But the eldest daughter, my daughter's eldest daughter, would blow people away when she was fully articulate at 2 years old. She didn't just talk like an adult. She used words like particularly and large words. So she had this fully adult conversation with a 2-year-old, and he seems so behind. But I noticed things like how advanced his motor skills are. That I gave him one of those little cars that you're supposed to pull back and let it go. He only had to see it operated once. He didn't get it right, but he pushed it the wrong way. But I was still impressed that at 14 months old, he could immediately see that and do it. And then she gave him this long piece of stick that's got all these bits of leather off it. And he's in the back seat and behind me in the car. And he could flick me on the head with it. I noticed those advanced motor skills. So it's interesting that your son's a boy and he's 3.5, and he doesn't have that sense of rhythm. And that's probably what's buying into, because it won't be misbehavior. He won't know. If he's not conscious of it, it's like things that we're not conscious of. You have to know it to be aware of it. So I like the strategy that you gave me about an arm's length. I'd probably talk about, when you're with dad, then we like to be up close, and you can be right up close. When you're talking to dad and mum, you can be up close. But, different people. So maybe with your friends, he won't think of that until there's a problem. He probably won't think of it on his way up to the friend. But when he works out, I'm getting a negative reaction, then he might kick in that skill of the arm's length. But I'd just do things like have him on your lap while you're rocking to music, especially that was called the Mozart effect, which is music at the rate of the heartbeat at resting, which is all Mozart music, all nursery rhymes and stuff. But even if it's a rock song, just him to be able to feel the rhythm in your body. It's not making him do it. It's making him experience it and feel it. Just like we don't, get a newborn baby home from the hospital and say, right, clap to the beat. You have to spend bloody, hours and hours doing the beat for them before they ever learn to do that. So it may just be that. Did he spend a lot of time in exercises and jolly jumpers and restricted movement as a baby?
No. So for me, my background, as I mentioned before, my background's in corrective exercise. So for me, jolly jumpers and all these things, I just look at the weight of the head on a baby and I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting you say that. So there's a couple of things that are coming up for me. So number one, I'm a musician myself, and I've definitely noticed in the last, like I said, he's 2.5. So for the 3.5. So for the last year, 18 months, he sings, man. I've got video this weekend, he's just been singing Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror, and he's trying, and then he's but I can tell, I can hear, when I'm singing or he's listening to my songs, I can hear that he'll skip the beat. He'll say he doesn't comprehend that there's this word and then there's a pause and then there's this other word. But what's really interesting is that, he spent a lot of time in my arms and in his mum's arms as a baby. So I was really fortunate to have a lot of time off when he was a baby and spending a lot of time doing that. A lot of time in my arms, a lot of time in her arms as well. And so we definitely, all of that.
So that experience.
Had that experience and a lot of music as well. I made sure that, as baby, we had good music going on, and diverse stuff. So, classical through to, rock and just kind of everything and rap, some raps, don't tell his mum, anything with a beat. Last week, I'm like, right, buddy, I think you're probably at about the age now where we can start teaching you a bit of the guitar. Do you want to start learning a little bit of the guitar? And so we sat down and I was trying to learn. At the moment, he really wants me to play the Stinkosaurus song.
Okay.
By Mr. Yippity. But it's quite a difficult one to actually play, as simple and childish as it is. But even with that,
maybe start with Baby Shark.
Yeah. But we're playing, and then I'm trying to get him. I'm like, you start with your drum. Here's the drum, and we got this. I just want you to do this. Can you clap to that? And then he'll just instantly double time it and go all for it. And it's he's not connected to the music. So, and then that was part of the thing with when he was singing the other night at dinner. He was singing Man in the Mirror, and then I would come in and I would do the oh yeah. And then he was like, no, I'm the only one singing. I'm like, no, there's backup singers. And then he was like, there's no such thing. And I was like, yeah, like, hey, we're going to watch the video. And I put it on TV. And I was like, look, you can see the choir coming out. And then like, this is, I think, the TV Music Awards. And MJ's there and he's doing Man in the Mirror. And like this big choir comes out and the choir are clapping. And I'm like, okay, cool. Do you see the choir clapping like this? Let's clap with them. And I'm holding his hands and he's doing a little bit of that rhythm. And then he's just, as soon as I take my hands away, he's out of that rhythm. So it's an interesting thing that you say. If you've got, I guess, sort of some more food for thought on that one.
It's complicated though, isn't it? Because if I was critical, I could just say that you were sucking the fun out of the room by making it instructional. That he wants to enjoy. That a lot of music is the joy and the connection and the feeling. And so I understand when he's like, no, shut up, you don't sing, I'm singing. Because it's not about his timing or the technicality of it. It's about expressing yourself and stuff. So I would just say you want both, but clearly define which is which. So if you're going to move into instructional and he wants to learn instructional, do something to ritualize that. I mean, I'm making this up, but okay, I'm going to bloody put my baseball cap on. When my baseball cap's on, Dad's in teacher mode, and now we're going to learn. And he knows, he can see, ritualize, okay, I'm going to clap along. Whereas if he's trying to have joy, and you're saying clap along, he's like, oh, it doesn't really go there, and it's like, oh, piss off. He's not connected. He doesn't want to learn. It's not about what you teach. It's about what he wants to learn. So I think set up the learning, because you do want both. Kids, boys, who start to learn a musical instrument before the age of 7, have huge advantages to their brain. They develop this thing in the middle called the corpus callosum. And the corpus callosum is what joins the left and the right hand brain. It's the bridge between the two brains. And women have a much more detailed corpus callosum. That's why we think women commit suicide less, why they seem to be able to multitask, all of these events, and because they have a much more detailed corpus callosum. I say to people, if you think of it as a bridge that joins the left and the right hand brain, Mum has a 6-lane highway bridge. It's like the German autobahn. There's no speed limits, no traffic jams. It's just so bloody fast. We call it multitasking, like she's doing the left and the right brain at the same time. If women have a 6-lane highway, men have a swing bridge back here. There's some planks missing in the swing bridge. So it's a tentative journey to go from the left to the right-hand side of the brain. So subsequently, men spend most of their time on the left-hand side of the brain. Logical, unemotional, procedural. But boys who learn a musical instrument before the age of 7 start to learn it, have a corpus callosum the same as the females. So it can literally be reducing his chances of suicide, literally making him more emotionally intelligent as a person. So it's a good thing to do, but so much under the age of 7 is also about play-based. Under the age of 7 is not what you learn, it's what you feel about yourself as a learner. It's hard to go into the complexity of it, but it means, from a pure research point of view, you're better to have a 7-year-old who can only count to 10. So he does understand the process of counting. If you had a 7-year-old that doesn't know what counting is, that's real danger because he's been locked in a cupboard or something, right? Even if no one's instructed him, he would have worked out the basics. But knowing 1,000 instead of knowing to count to 10 really makes little difference. What matters is whether you can count or not. What really matters is how you feel about it. So what I'm saying, I'm using too many words, but you're better to have a bloody 6-year-old who can count to 10 but thinks, I'm a fucking genius, thank you very much, than you are to have a 6-year-old who can count to 1,000 but thinks he's not clever enough. Under 7, what matters is how clever you feel. So I think sometimes we forget that and we get into the instruction and actually, if they're not, he might learn to count along, but he might also learn, I'm incompetent. Dad's the confident one, I'm the incompetent one. And if he feels incompetent, that's just as much of a problem. So I think that's why I say ritualize it, so he knows the difference. So you're not discounting his passion and his joy and what he's trying to do, and if at the dinner table he's just trying to perform and be the centre of attention, which is a crucial thing for Michael Jackson to have learned to do. He could be technically the best bloody singer in the world. If he didn't know how to show off and be centre of attention, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So it's about celebrating what he's got and not feeling like that's a correction. So that's why I say put the hat on, go, right, now we're going to do instructional stuff. I mean, it doesn't have to be put a hat on, you know what I mean? It's to ritualize it, to make it different than the other times.
No, that's great advice. And look, I will say, I guess there's a part of me that really wants to jump to defense here. But it, like both his mum and I think that we are both really good at, praising effort and kind of like doing this. And, it's the whole thing. Like I had Trey Tucker on the podcast a while ago and part of that with what we were talking about was around, buddy, like I've read, like even after football the other day, it's like, he's like, Dad, did I do good? And I was just like, what do you think, bud? And he's like, oh, it was good. I was like, did you have fun? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, man, I could see you having fun. I really love watching you have fun. Cool. Like, it just brings me joy. And it's the same stuff with the singing. Like, it is very much like, I love hearing you singing. And like, I'm hearing you. It sounds like you're getting louder. And even the other day, I was praising a little thing, and maybe there might be a little bit of negative here, but it was, I was like, oh, buddy, I'm really starting to hear some melody coming into your voice now too. Like I can hear that you're like the practice that you're putting in, you're actually starting to get like some differences going on here. And, and he's sitting there and he's going, yeah, I'm really good, eh? And I'm like, yes. And, I think one thing that his mum and I really do well in both of our houses is definitely pumping up his confidence and his self-belief. On that though, like, I mean, I do have a question, because there is a part of me, and this might be sort of to what you were talking about before in terms of those, the other dads that try to be the father and try to be the disciplinary. It's that thing, but when the real world comes, and this is what my dad did, bud. So just, I mean, you mentioned, your mum growing up. So my dad was an alcoholic as well. I didn't get much attention at all, unless, I was needing discipline and I was needing all of this stuff. So I never really had a good framework for being a dad. And so becoming a dad for me has always been, shit, am I going to turn into that guy inadvertently? So I'm trying to do all that I can.
Yeah. So I fear a lot of men have, mate.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly what this whole podcast and this whole journey here is about, is actually going, well, shit, there's other guys that have walked the path that I can get better frameworks from than I did. So, but one of the things that he said to me at 16, when I said to him, at 16, and he's going, what do you want to be when you're older? And I'm like, I want to be a musician. I want to go out and sing. And he said, well, you're never going to be good enough. But, for him to sit there and say to me, no, you'll never be good enough. There's always going to be somebody better than you, and you need a plan B. And I never at this point, my parents had been separated for 4 years. I saw my dad once a week. He was an alcoholic. I knew he was drunk. So, but as I said before, like as kids, we're always going to idolize our parents, right? Like we're always going to have that and go, oh, well, okay, I'm going to prove it to dad. So when my dad says to me, you need a plan B, I went, right, I'm going to go do that plan B. Similar to what your kid maybe said, Dad, you tried to save the world, but you should have got rich first. So instead, I'm going, I'll go get rich, and then I'll have the money to go and pursue my music career. I went and partied, got drunk, spent the first kind of 4 years out of school partying and hospitality, doing all of that. And then I fed up with that and I went, need something different. Became a personal trainer, got into the gym. And I mean, prior to that, I'd also been pursuing music. But on reflection now, like I never really went 100% on the music, because there was always that undercurrent of I'm never going to be good enough. I've got that voice in my head. Now at 40, with my dad dead and me being a dad, I'm like, fuck, there's no way that I'm going to let that get into my kids' heads. And I'm going to do all that I can to shift what I've done. And you mentioned before that you can change your personality easy, but I'm sitting there going, actually, it's a fucking hell of a lot of effort, because, you've got this, the law of facilitation that, in terms of our neuroplasticity and our patterns and behaviors, right? So these things that are ingrained that I actually have to actively shift and kind of move through. Like because I also think that being the opposite of my dad is also not the way.
No, that's right. Yeah. Gives the power, but you're not power.
Yeah. So all of this is a roundabout way to kind of say, well, cool. We want to get that confidence in and get him going. Yes, I can do that. And obviously, sort of between that 0 to 7 age, that's kind of one thing. But then at what point do we start going, well, actually, maybe let's be a little bit honest about these skills. Like, should we not do that and just kind of let life sort it out, wait until they're in their 20s and 30s? Or is there a bit to go, because there's also that other piece of, you don't necessarily want to be pushing and, being that overbearing parent, being like, you're doing this. We found a skill for you. You're a great tennis player at the age of 7, so that's all we're going to do, and we're going to practice that every day. Unless they love it, like unless they're like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant, that's like, I want to do this, and I'm going to do this every day.
Tiger Woods,
So, exactly, right. So how do we navigate that bit if we don't have, say, an outlier kid? Let's call those guys the outlier kids that are super passionate and get hooked in. My question here is really around like, how do we balance out that piece of going, yes.
That's the key word right there, balance.
Right. Yeah. We want to encourage them, and we want to pump them up and give them that sense that, and that's why whenever he's asking me stuff, like even yesterday, we're about to start playing basketball, and then he sees a bunch of seagulls out on the grass, and he's like, Dad, can I go chase those seagulls? And I'm like, what do you think? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, go for it. And he runs out and he gets halfway across, and then he just slips in this big bucket of mud. And I'm just standing there watching. I think it's a great laugh. And then he gets up slowly, comes back, he's crying. And I'm just like, hey, okay, like this is part of the fun. Like, that's okay. Like, I understand you slipped up here, and we've got a wet bum. We can change your clothes. That's okay. But you made a decision and you had fun, right? Like you were chasing, and he's like crying, going, yeah, like I wanted to chase the seagull.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, sorry, thank you listeners for your patience. But cutting to the question here, in terms of we're sort of going, okay, I want to raise a confident kid and I want him to have that self-belief, but at the same time, will I be doing him a disservice if I'm not giving him some real world feedback? And also at what point should we start thinking about that realistically?
Yeah. The point that you should start thinking about it is when the child says it themselves. When they go, because, if your father had left it, you had an open relationship with your father, you would have said at some point, but what happens if I grow up and I don't become a rock star? And then dad can go, oh, yeah, well, I suppose, it's more important that you follow your passion. And I think that even if you don't become a rock star, the fact that you followed your passion and gave all of yourself to achieve that, that's what's important. And the skills that you will have, you'll be able to carry through all the rest of your life. Who knows what your future's going to be? Most people are going to have jobs that aren't even invented yet. But the passion and the discipline behind what you're doing is going to serve you for the rest of your life. And so doing that with music, don't focus too much, mate, on whether you're going to be a rock star or not. I think you will be. But yeah, what other skills could you do? If you weren't going to be a rock star, what else would you like to be? Was it possible for you to do both? Like I wanted to be an actor, but I felt guilty that I was the only intelligent person in my family that got through school and stuff and could get highly qualified. And it was like the message was that'd be a waste of time to go acting. And I also thought I'm from a little place in Milton and I might be good at it there, but same as you, lack the self-confidence. And now as an adult, I can look back and go, oh, I would have achieved in that, just like I've achieved in what I've done, that I did have what it takes. But I don't think my life's gone wrong. I should have been an actor. I think, my higher power had a bigger picture for me because a lot of actors are just unemployed a lot of the time in New Zealand. And so I do have faith that things turn out, sort of guided and things work out the way they're supposed to. Now I have a job where I'm essentially an actor on stage performing, but I could be a father as well and earn a decent amount of income. And whereas not to be a waiter in between. And the friends I've got that are actors have to have wealthy spouses because the reality in New Zealand, even if you're on Shortland Street, I've had friends that have been on Shortland Street, you get quite a good salary for a few years, but you're not riding around in limos and stuff. The rest of the time you're doing community theatre and I wouldn't have liked that life. So I'm glad I didn't just follow acting. I get what I like out of acting is the being on stage part and the connecting with people and basically performing in front of a group. And I get that, as well as all this information about the brain and about that relates to my parenting and stuff. So I wouldn't look at your life with regret and go, I think everything's worked out as it's meant to. And really, there's absolutely nothing stopping you being fucking Michael Jackson now if you wanted to. I know the story's not that way, but it's not impossible. So, and the skills that you've got that you've developed instead, like I say, it's all about self-discipline and stuff. So with our kids, there's a criticism that this generation of kids have all been told they can be a rock star and or a famous actor, and they don't want to do anything but be a rock star and a famous actor. So you don't set your kid up for success and to have discipline and work ethic and stuff by just going, oh, you're amazing, you're the best in the world, you're a rock star. But I think ages and stages, under 7, it's understanding that, the first 3 years, it's really just about partnership. The first 3 years, the more often your child feels in partnership and that you're on their side, regardless what happens, the better things are. So in the first 3 years, just focus on being in partnership with your child. 3 to 7, focus on passion and creativity and how you feel. So let them play the air guitar. Don't offer any technical stuff until they ask for it, and really it's 90% how you feel as a learner. That's what's going to drive you forward in your life. Academically, we call it dispositions. So dispositions are things like, how often do you persevere through failure? Do you try once and then give up? Or do you try 20 times before you give up? Because the person who's got a disposition of trying 20 times is going to be way more successful in life. So if we try and instruct the 4-year-old, he gets overwhelmed very quickly and he gives up quickly. So you've just taught him to have a disposition, try once. When he's doing it because he's having fun and he's bloody, playing the air guitar at the table and stuff, you might only get 1 or 2% technical stuff in there, but he's developing a disposition of practicing music for hours, even though from our adult point of view, he hasn't learned anything. He still hasn't got a bloody sense of rhythm. He's just been up there screaming with the guitar, but he's learning the disposition, I say with your kids, and if he's damming a creek through the centre, he's in an early childhood centre and he wants to build a dam in the creek, there's no subject in primary school called dam building, so no one thinks that's getting him ready for school. But no one dams a creek successfully the first time, or the second time, or the third time. They persevere through 19 failures before they finally... So it's those dispositions under 7 that really matter. So you don't worry about teaching so much under 7. There's teachable moments, That's why I say ritualize it, so it's out of the norm. But most of the norm should be about following them, following their passion, letting them be the lead scientist, and you're more their assistant than you are their teacher. That overt teaching stuff, I think, is typically around 7 that they respond a wee bit more to that.
Is that different for boys and girls?
No, not. I mean, there is a little bit of difference. Girls are more sensitive to criticism, obviously. I mean, sometimes, not obviously. It's hard to say because, genders, there isn't really just boys and girls. There's sort of everything in between. There's girly boys and boy girls and, but I think it's about how you communicate, eh? It's about, you shouldn't say like your father said, you need to be a rock star. You're not good enough. It's about, the intention behind what he was saying was good. He didn't want to set you up for failure. He wanted you to also have a successful life where you weren't going to be unemployed. But he could have achieved that by going, okay, mate, that's your passion. That's great that you've discovered what your passion is. A lot of people go their whole lives without knowing what their passion is. So you've done really well, and I can hear that when you play. I think you've got the gift, but it's going to take discipline, and you're going to have to apply yourself, and it's going to take hard work to achieve that because a lot of people want to be musicians. So I'd encourage it. I'd praise it. I'd say I think you can achieve it. And then at some point, the kid's going to say themselves, "What happens if I don't? What happens if I'm not successful?" And then I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but I'll say something like, I've got a mate who's a musician and he's also like an architect. So he does architecture stuff on the side and does up the plans for his mate's house as a cashier under the table and stuff. And he's been able to support being a musician because he's got this other skill. So is there anything else that you could have as a skill that would support your music stuff? Some guys get into the sounding, so they get sound gigs as well you know what I'm saying? You can encourage them without discouraging them. Your father could have achieved what he wanted, which was protect you from being unemployed and poor and being disappointed. He could protect you from that, but also not discourage you, but not saying you can't do it.
There was a book written a couple of years ago that I remember our CEO at Tom and Luke, he sort of brought up with me in terms of the sort of the idea around diversification versus specification. So,
right, yeah.
In terms of learnings and these kind of things. So is, in your experience and from your perspective, is it better to have diversity in terms of like learning some skills and just kind of getting a little bit of everything? Or is it better to actually, as you sort of mentioned, like if you do hone in and you've found that passion, like, cool, let's get you dedicated, let's actually work. And then, because there's an old saying, right? Like people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10. So it's kind of thing. If you do start getting really specific, maybe in 1 year you might not look like you've gone too far, but in 2 years and 3 years, hoo-wee, now you're getting the calls up for whatever it is that you chose.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you need both. If you specialise too early, that you might change your mind. That will evolve and it might disappear. I remember early on with my career thinking, right, I need to get a television show. So I really, really focused on getting a television show. And I achieved that at a time when no one else watched television anymore because I didn't know social media was going to come and Netflix were going to come and that actually that dream of having a television, the dream of it was to have lots of influence. But that didn't come through a television show because hardly anyone watches television, mainstream television now. So I think it's good to get the skills that you get from being specific and going, okay, here's your dream. You need to have self-discipline. I mean, my son was really into rugby. So, so that meant, he went to the camps. It meant that he wouldn't have a job during the holidays and I had to support him because he was going to extra training camps and he never ever missed practice and he learned all the stuff I wanted him to learn about dedication but in that one area. And then I encouraged him to be as diverse as possible in the rest of it, like, across the school curriculum and stuff, because I think you want to develop the whole mind. I mean, I've got friends who are rugby players, so that's a classic example. You're not going to be a rugby player your whole life. Actually, by the time you're 30, you're old and past it pretty much. So you inherently have to have a backup plan there. But I think you're more than you know you are. So having a diverse curriculum and diverse experiences really expands your brain. I made my kids, I know from the research, I said, right, you have to learn a musical instrument and you have to have a second language. So I speak Te Reo Māori, so they had to speak Te Reo Māori. So I said, you can choose all of your own subjects at school, but you have to do Te Reo Māori. That's the only compulsory one. And so I remember my kids, especially my son, arguing back about that. Oh, no one speaks Māori anymore, blah, 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 like they do. But, as he's an adult, he's come back to me and gone, oh, God, I can see what a huge advantage that was. He said, not only do I have another language, but I've got another way of thinking. And I understand the people of the world so much better. I see all the monocultural people around me that think there's just one reality. And I don't know all the realities, but just by having two, I knew that there wasn't just one. And when he went for one of his first job interviews, the lady said to him, probably no one in this job's going to speak Te Reo Māori, so you won't need that skill, but we're giving you the job just because the other applicants will only speak one language. And this implies that you will be better at adapting to other cultures and be more inclusive and stuff. So we had to come back and go, oh, Dad, you were right. Same thing with public speaking. Like I said to my kids, A's, unless you're going to Harvard University or med school, A's don't really matter that much. The good little girls are all compliant to get A's, the Charlottes and the Georges. And they don't necessarily become the world changers or the big leaders. The profile of a real leader is usually a C to B academic student who has well-developed interpersonal skills and is described as passionate. So I would my kids are Māori, so they would do public speaking anyway. Every time you go to the marae, you've got to stand up and things. But I pushed that, and I said, you will be seen more as a leader because you can stand up and talk to a room of people than you will, a whole course on leadership. And my son was working at Vodafone for the school holidays, 400 employees. They kept sending out these emails saying, we need someone to MC the conference. They had Graham Henry as the speaker. And he said he watched these emails come through. No one would do it. Everyone's petrified of public speaking. And all it is standing up and saying, here are the toilets, here's our speaker. So he waited a bit and then he went, oh, look, I'm only the intern here for the holidays. And I don't mean to push myself forward, but if no one else wants to do it, I don't care doing it. So they snapped him up straight away and said, okay. So he's emceeing this event. He said after that, everyone in the company kept coming to him and asking him to talk to the bosses on their behalf. They all seen him as on the fast track to management and saw him as a new up-and-coming thing. He says, all because I could stand up and say, the toilets are out the hallway to the right, and here's our next speaker. But people see you as a leader because you can do that. So that's what I mean by diversity of dispositions and stuff. It's not just about, if you just specialise and you get all A's in music, you're so restricted in what you can do for the rest of your life and the skills you've got for the rest of your life because we don't know what it's going to evolve into. But I don't think you want to sacrifice your passion. You want both. You want to apply yourself to that music, or music in this case, but, have a diversity as well and an array of experiences.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, I mean, personally, I definitely feel like I've got that. I mean, it's interesting as well that you mentioned around the language thing. So one of the things for me when in becoming a father, like I started getting back into my German lessons. I haven't been able to sort of get that on for the last sort of year or two, just in terms of the costs involved. But, but part of that was because, my boy's mum, her mum, they're from South Africa. So they speak, her mum, his Omi, she speaks, Afrikaans, I think a little bit of Yiddish, but also German as well. So I was thinking, okay, cool. Well, actually, I could get back and we could learn German, and that way my boy's going to learn German and have another language because of exactly what you've just said there. In terms of not only are you speaking another language, but for me, it's more like, okay, you've got a different way of piecing things together. A different way of seeing the
problem
world.
Solving, everything.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, even at 3.5, it hasn't really worked too much. I've got some, I've got some German books, and I tried reading that to him, but he was also kind of struggling with that because he's not immersed in the language. Obviously, it sounds like you guys are immersed with that today. But you mentioned earlier in terms of the music side of things and that helping with being able to link left and right sides of the brain. How does language impact the neurological development?
We say language is the major driver of cognition. That's the academic sentence. So what that means is how brainy you are is mainly driven by language. Language is the most complex thing your brain does, which confuses people because it doesn't seem complex. But if you start to break down language, it's got syntax, grammar, pace, pitch, tone, intonation, hand movements, facial movements. New Zealanders speak a whole language just with their eyebrows. So, you've got to piece all of that together and so it really is, if I've got you on a brain scan and I get you to do a calculus equation, that might feel hard, like you're using lots of your brain, but most of your brain as a biological unit is there for the purpose of interacting with other brains. So even though the calculus feels hard on the brain scan, only tiny little areas glowing up when you do a hard calculus equation. And then your best mate walks in the room halfway through the calculus, so you give up on the maths and go, oh, g'day, bro, how are you? How's the wife? How's the kids? Feels like the easiest thing in the world. What you'd see on the brain scan is the microsecond you recognise your friend. All of these areas of the brain spark up. So that's why the number one resilience lifting thing for a human being across all the international research, the number one thing you can do to lift a human being's outcomes is to have a parent stay at home in the first year of life. That's why Scandinavian countries pay someone to, mum to stay at home in the first year of life. This is why eldest children usually grow up to be richer and higher qualified, Because basically, in their first year of life, when they're gathering data on what sort of world they're in, with eldest children, we tend to speak 20,000 words a day because we only have one kid, so we've got time. With the kids 2, 3, and 4, we only speak 15,000 words a day, 25% less. That's why eldest children go out to be the richest and the highest qualified. Got nothing to do with high school. It's to do with that first year of life being exposed to more language. So the more language has to be meaningful language. Now, research is sort of left brain. It's measurable, and so, but it's really more to do with your sense of partnership. What I said before, if your kid feels in partnership with you, and usually if a kid's hearing 20,000 words, they're twice as often in partnership than a kid is hearing 10,000 words. So researchers count the number of words because that's what's measurable. But if you want to get to the essence of it, it's really about partnership. But it's still, language is the major driver of cognition. Eldest children hear 20,000 words, so they build up a brain for 20,000 units of complexity. The other kids only built up 15,000 units of complexity. It's probably the second thing you can do to make your child intelligent is be bilingual. So again, that's language-based. So profound are the benefits to being bilingual to the human brain that from a neuroscience point of view, it looks like it is bordering on neglect to raise a kid with only one language. It is clear we did not evolve to only speak one language. And you miss out on a lot of the benefits. I know that's bad for New Zealanders and Australians because it's common for us to only speak one language, but it's not common in the rest of the world. It's not common in history. And literally, being bilingual is one of the few things you can say makes your kid more intelligent and more resilient. Literally. Because it actually grows parts of the brain that we associate with intelligence and resilience. So there's very little else that does that. So language is really, really important. But to me, again, it's because language is on the left-hand side of the brain and we can measure it. And research is only about measurable things, which is half the world. The most important thing for your child is love. You don't get a lot of research on love because it's not easily measurable. Because you say you love your child, but with equal passion, you say you love Fridays and you love chocolate and you love beer. So it just makes it hard to research. But I think it's that sense of partnership that comes with the language that actually is what's driving brain development. It's your relationship.
Yeah.
If you don't want to listen to the whole podcast, the three most important things that you need that are going to give your child the best outcomes possible is relationship, relationship, relationship. It's all about your relationship and the quality of that relationship. Even when you fuck up, when you fix that, that's still a quality relationship. We call it rupture and repair. We're all going to lose our shit sometimes. But when you go back and say, sorry, I shouldn't have swore at you. That's not your fault. That's me losing the plot. That leads to resilient children. If you have no rupture, those kids are quite soft and can't handle things going wrong. If you just have rupture, those kids go to prison and have really bad mental health. But rupture and repair is what leads to resilient kids and good outcomes. So to me, that's just relationship. If you're my friend and I lose the plot and, tell you to fuck off, if you're a good friend, I should be able to go back and say, oh, sorry, my mother just died and stuff, and you'd be understanding and we would repair. So it's the same thing with your kids. You're not supposed to have a perfect relationship. You're supposed to have a high-quality relationship, which means that you take accountability when you do things wrong and you say sorry. It's all about relationship.